Dear students, today we are going to discuss redemption of preference shares. So first of all, let's discuss what is a preference share. As you can see, preference share means those shares on which the shareholder is having a preferential right over the payment of dividend and repayment of share capital. So preference shares refers to all those shares on which the shareholder is having a preferential right over the repayment of capital and payment of dividend. So in case of equity shares, they don't have any preference. These preference shareholders having a preference over the equity shareholders for the payment of dividend before the payment to the equity shareholders, and these preference shareholders will be getting their capital at the time of winding up of the company first. So they will be getting some priority on the payment of dividend and repayment of capital at the event of winding up of the company. This is the preference shares. Then here are some different types of preference shares. So the first case is redeemable preference shares. Preference shares can be either redeemable and irredeemable. So redeemable preference shares are those shares which are redeemed or repaid after the expiry of a stipulated period. So in case of these redeemable preference shares, the amount of preference shares will be repaid after a specific period. So the capital on these redeemable preference shares will be repaid after a specific date. And in case of irredeemable preference shares, the capital will not be repaid. The capital will be paid only at the time of winding up of this company. But in case of redeemable preference shares, the capital will be repaid on a specific date. And the second case is cumulative preference shares. Cumulative preference shares. If preference shares dividend is payable if the companies earn adequate profit. The dividend is paid if the company earns adequate profit. But in case of cumulative preference shares, they carry an additional feature which allow the preference shareholders to claim unpaid dividends of the years in which dividend could not be paid due to insufficient profit. That means if the company did not pay dividend for an accounting period or for a financial year due to insufficient profit, and when the next year when they have sufficient profit, the shareholders can get the dividend for the previous year also. It's known as cumulative preference shares. That means their unpaid dividend is getting cumulative to next year. Their unpaid dividend is cumulative to the next year. So if dividend is not paid in 1 year, the same will be paid with the next year. That's the cumulative preference shares. And in case of non-cumulative preference shares, if the company does not have sufficient profit to pay off dividend in this year, and the company will not pay the dividend for this year, and in the next year the shareholders will not get the dividend of the previous year. So they don't have such an opportunity here. Their unpaid dividend will not cumulate in case of non-cumulative preference shares. So the holders of non-cumulative preference shares will get preference dividend if the company earns sufficient profit, but they do not have the right to claim unpaid dividend which could not be paid due to insufficient profit. But in case of cumulative preference shares, these preference shareholders have the right to claim unpaid dividends of the years in which dividend could not be paid due to insufficient profit. So these are the two cases, cumulative preference shares and non-cumulative preference shares. Then participating preference shares. Participating preference shareholders are entitled to share the surplus profit of the company in addition to the preference dividend. So they will be getting the share of the surplus profit earned by this company in addition to their dividend. So if the company is earning surplus profit or extra profit, these participating preference shares can participate in that surplus profit. They'll be getting a share on the surplus profit. That means they will be participating in the surplus profit. But in case, the next case is non-participating preference shares. So here, they don't have any participation on the surplus profit. So these shareholders will not entitled to get share surplus profit and surplus assets like participating preference shares. So they will be getting only the fixed rate of return or the fixed dividend, but the participating preference shares will be getting the surplus profit along with the predetermined dividend. The next case is convertible preference shares. Convertible preference shares refers to those shares which can be converted into equity shares. At the time of redemption, those shares which can be converted into equity shares is termed as convertible preference shares. And in case of non-convertible preference shares, these shares cannot be converted to the equity shares. They remains preference shares till their redemption. This is the case. In case of non-redeemable preference shares, these shares will remain preference shares till their redemption. So these shares cannot be converted to the equity shares. Then, tenure of preference shares. Tenure of redeemable preference shares. So as per Companies Act 2013, a company limited by shares may, if so authorized by its article, issue preference shares which are liable to redeemed within a period not exceeding 20 years from the date of their issue. So as per the Companies Act, it is clearly mentioned that the preference shares, that means the redeemable preference shares, should be redeemed within 20 years. So the maximum tenure for the redeemable preference share is 20 years. The maximum tenure for the redeemable preference shares is 20 years. Then, a company may issue preference shares for a period exceeding 20 years up to 30 years for infrastructure project. So, infrastructural preference shares. Those preference shares for the infrastructural project subject to the redemption of 10% of shares on annual basis at the option of such preference shareholders from 21st year onwards. So, infrastructural preference shares can be issued for 20 to 30 years, but the case is that those preference shares should be redeemed annually after 20 years on 10% basis. So, usually and generally, the preference shares should be redeemed within 20 years except in the case of infrastructural project. Then, here are some conditions for issue of preference shares. Conditions for issue of preference shares. Company's article should contain such clause allowing issue of preference shares. So, the articles of association of the company should contain such clause allowing issue of preference shares. So, that must be mentioned in the articles of association that the company can issue preferential shares. And the second case, memorandum should have preference shares as a part of authorized capital. Memorandum, there is a clause in memorandum regarding the capital clause. That capital clause should mention the preference shares. The authorized capital section should mention the preference shares and its qualities. And the company at the time of such issue of preference shares has no subsisting default in the redemption of preference shares issued either before or after the commencement of this act or in payment of dividend due to any preference shares. So before issuing any preference shares, it is to be made clear that company does not have any default in redemption of any preference shares of earlier. I mean, a company cannot issue preference shares unless they have cleared all their dues on in any of the previous preference shares. If a company is having redemption pending with one preference shares, and this company cannot issue new preference shares until they have cleared all the dues regarding their previous redemption. Then obtain prior approval of the shareholder by way of a special resolution. So they have to pass a special resolution in their general meeting. Then a valuation report to be taken to arrive at issue price. So they have to make a valuation report on their performance of the company to be taken to arrive issue price. The issue price is determined on the basis of the report. Then redemption of preference shares. Redemption of preference shares. In the previous classes, we were discussed about the redemption of debenture. So redemption of preference shares is also similar to redemption of debenture. So redemption means is a process of repaying an obligation, usually at a pre-arranged amount or predetermined amount. So repaying an obligation at a predetermined amount. So redemption of preference shares refers to repaying the preference share amount on a specified date and on a specified amount. These shares are issued to the shareholders on terms that holder will at some future date be repaid the amount which they invested in the company. So in case of redeemable preference shares, the redemption period will be mentioned at the time of issue itself. The redemption date is known as the maturity date, which specifies when the repayment takes place and is usually be mentioned in the agreement. So this redeemable preference shares will be redeemed within 20 years of the issue, and the redemption date will be mentioned at the time of issue itself. Here are some conditions on redemption. The first condition is fully paid up preference shares can only be redeemed. Only fully paid up preference shares can only be redeemed. So if a preference share is worth of ₹100 can be redeemed only if the whole amount, that means the ₹100 is paid by the shareholders. And the second case, preference shares can be redeemed only out of profit available for distribution. Can be redeemed only out of profit available for distribution to its holders, or out of proceeds of fresh issue of shares solely for the purpose of funding the redemption of preference shares. So the redemption can be done in two ways: by redeeming out of profit or making a fresh issue of shares to redeem the preference shares. So in two ways the company can redeem the preference shares. And where the redeemable preference shares are redeemed out of profit available for distribution, a sum equivalent to the nominal amount of shares being redeemed shall be transferred to the capital redemption reserve. Just like our case in debenture, when we want to redeem this debenture out of profit, we need to transfer at least 50% of this debenture to the debenture redemption reserve. Just like that, whenever a company needs to redeem these shares out of profit, they need to make a reserve on a sum equivalent to the nominal value of shares to an account called capital redemption reserve. Then provisions of the Companies Act regarding the redemption of debenture. Section 55 subsection 2 of Companies Act, a company limited by share may issue preference shares if so is authorized by its articles and which are liable to be redeemed within a period of not exceeding 20 years from the date of their issue, and in case of infrastructural preference share it can be either 20 to 30 years. And here are three methods as per the section 55 methods of redemption. The first method is capitalization of undistributed profit. This redemption can be done through the profit, undistributed profit of this company. And another way of issue is issue of fresh capital. The company can find the amount required for issuing or for redeeming the share by issuing preference share capital. So if the company want to issue a new preference shares, they can make a fresh issue of capital, then they can redeem the preference shares by using the fund which they got on this fresh issue. And the second case is the combination of these two methods. Some part of the shares are redeemed by using undistributed profit and some part by issuing fresh shares. So these are the cases, and in the next class we'll be discussing the redemption procedure or the accounting treatment on the redemption of preference shares. Thank you.